everything. So, Dylan, while I'm going to change the title, you can go first.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start by saying that I thought that F-Zero was a lot of fun. A little disappointed after playing it to know that it wasn't multiplayer. I kind
Mm-hmm.
of think that would be kind of how I want to play that. Would be playing with, with a buddy. You have your friends over. You're sitting on the couch and you're racing each other and you're bumping into each other. But that's me with racing games. I don't tend to enjoy playing a racing game by myself. But
Neither
all
do I.
that to
Yeah.
say, the mechanics, the gameplay, all of it was tons of fun, and all the maps until we got to that very last one were at least doable. And I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
there's a trick to doing that last map. We just couldn't figure it out. Um, but I enjoyed it, and the soundtrack was great. I think, especially for its time, that was a great game, and I think it still holds up as an enjoyable game to play.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that real quick. This is less about the game itself, but what you were just saying about the soundtrack itself. Um, if you came out of this, if any of you, Dylan, Jarrell, or anyone else watching this came out of this saying, "Hey, this soundtrack's really good," almost all of the songs in this game are in Smash in some way, in like the My Music section, either in the original I'm sorry, Super Nintendo 16-bit MIDI form or
Hmm.
remixes. I must say,
Okay.
like this game has a course called Firefield, which we didn't get to, but Firefield, its regular music is fine. But dude, there's a remix of Firefield they made in Smash Brawl that's still in modern games. It's like one of my favorite games. It's one of my favorite songs to have as a background when I'm like working or just having matches. It's such a good song. There's a lot of good F Zero
Hmm.
songs in Smash. Just wanted to put it out there. Now onto the game itself. Yes, as you were saying, again, I do get it because I just noticed it now. On the box it says the race of the 26th century. So this is meant to be take place in like the future where you can just like race these machines like that, and I guess you can just blow them up with like no consequences, I guess. But
Fair
yes,
enough.
yeah. As far as like the game itself, again, I get it because it's a technical showcase, so I guess that's why they didn't think to have it two player, or maybe it was a thought, but like they wanted to just kind of show. Maybe there just wasn't enough time. Like again,
Right.
Mario Kart came out later, arguably a much more well known racing game, and for the Super Nintendo, and of course that did have two players. So at that point they were kind of figured out a little more. Maybe by reducing the speed, they were able to make it more consistent, so multiple players can play together. That being
Right.
said, but still, yeah, like you said, like I certainly don't play racing games by myself. It's not how I like to play. I love to race against other people. Anytime I play Mario Kart, the reason why I put so much time into Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is because, it's Grand Prix modes. You can do that to unlock stuff, and that's nice and everything. But the far and beyond most time I put on Mario Kart 8 was going online and fighting other people, or if I have
Right.
friends over, racing against
Right.
them, or racing online against friends. Yeah,
Right.
like that's if I don't know how much hours I put in Mario Kart 8. Maybe it's like 80 hours, something like that. That's just an estimate. It might be longer, it might be shorter. But if let's say I did spend 80, I would guarantee you that maybe only 5 to 6 of that was single player. The rest of that is multiplayer races. So for a game like this, it's definitely a lot of fun. And it's very good that based on this foundation, they did make later F Zero games that did have multiplayer, so you can still enjoy that same kind of like high speed, fast racing. But now you can actually play with friends as well. And that's definitely a knock against this game, against its replayability today, because if you're just not someone that enjoys, I guess, arcade style racers to play by yourself, it may not appeal to you as much because multiplayer is a large part of draw of what these games are. But
Right.
barring that for a second and just talking about the game itself, I said at the beginning of this was a showcase of the Super Nintendo, and after actually playing it and seeing more of the course than I think I've ever had before, that's 100% true because we got to see like all these like cool like Super Nintendo based environments. The racing was fluid. The controls did feel nice. Like
Hmm.
barring that last turn, which I just could not figure out how to like get enough speed. That's probably
We
just
just
like
couldn't
practice.
figure it out.
That's just practice. That I guess that's just a tribute to practice of the course. Like I guess you have to like come from another turn and just maintain the speed fast enough that you can just like go into it and just take the jump. But I just was not able to figure that out within the 3 lives, and that sucks.
Right.
But I don't think that's necessarily a fault of the game itself. It's just something I just couldn't figure out in time because otherwise we were playing. We enjoyed the mechanics. It felt fair.
Right.
Like some cars definitely felt better controlled than others. I would say I definitely struggled the most using the Golden Fox. With Blue Falcon and the Wild Goose, which we were playing in that last race. Those felt great to control.
I agree.
How did you feel about the Fire Stingray, real quick, before I continue? Which is the pink one.
Yeah, so Fire Stingray, in my opinion, was not the best
Mm-hmm.
handling. I felt like I could get quick, but I also just felt like I wasn't in good control. I kind of was bouncing all over the place. I was constantly tearing up my health. So I did not enjoy it. But Blue Falcon, probably my favorite.
How would you feel? How did you feel about the Wild Goose while you were playing it the second round around? Was it good for
Wild
you
Goose,
or?
I liked. I'll say, which it actually is something I kind of liked. It was a noticeably different handling than Blue Falcon,
Mm-hmm.
which for a game, a racing game from Super Nintendo, you kind of just expect it to just be basically a reskin or just a different skin.
Sure.
But no, it wasn't. It was an entirely different experience. So that was pretty nice.
Great. I'm glad you said that because it does tie into what I was going to say as well. That you know, even though it is a single player, given that this essentially, again, I say it again, this is essentially a tech demo, but the fact that they thought to put in multiple cars, 4 in total, and each have them feel different, a tech demo game could have easily got away with just having you do the one car and just have
Right.
all these different courses, but they gave you 4 different cars, so you can choose which handling feels the best to you, so you can go through the different courses in the way that you would prefer to, and I think that's
Right.
great. I think that's really good that it has that option for you to be able to do that. So yeah, and then besides the cards themselves, the tracks. So the tracks themselves, they have like different layouts, but the track themselves goes beyond the layouts because with Deathwind, you got a wind mechanic that's like it's a simple course. It's like a simple circle. But what makes it complicated is the fact that there's wind blowing you to left and right. So you're trying to go to the boost and then you'll go just slightly right, miss the boost. Your opponent will go through it and just go right past you.
Right.
Big Blue and the White Land courses, you have water on the field, you have ice on the field. That will mess up your handling just enough that it can make your turns that much more difficult. And
Right.
we encountered a lot of that. And then, of course, there's the gaps that some courses
Right.
have. Like Port Town had it, which we were able to navigate, but White Land 2 had it too, which we were not able to conquer this time around. And that's another thing. And if you and those are like easily as far as we encountered the most dangerous of the obstacles because that is an instant demise if you cannot make those jumps.
Right.
So that's a nice little wrinkle that gets added to. I can tell you later, F-Zero games were a little more lenient about that. GX in particular on the GameCube, if you fell off, there was a thing that could bring you back on. GX is another hard game, but it's not hard because falling off means death. It's hard for other reasons, but that's another story. Anyway, all that to say, for the foundation of a game that would become one of Nintendo's staple series, I think it really shows. Again, it does it does its job. It shows off what the Super Nintendo's capable of. But more than that, I think it does show off what this game. It's a good solid racing game. Which Nintendo they before this time they had done like one or two other racing games, but this was probably I think their really first solid one that really became any kind of like note. Which Super Mario Kart would follow it a year later. But I'm
Right.
glad that they had like such a solid foundation. Now, all that held up. We agree that we both had like a really good time with this game. What we played.
Yeah. I enjoyed my time with it.
I agree, and I think if you're just looking for something to have like a good time, like it controls well, I think you'll enjoy it. But I am gonna be looping this back around to my first comment though. Whether or not this game holds up is entirely dependent on depending on why you enjoy racing games. Do you enjoy
Right.
racing games because you just enjoy moving a car, or these are technically cars, they're just like really fast cars. But anyway, like, do you enjoy just like moving around cars and like courses and just like figuring out tracks and stuff like that? If that's the reason that you enjoy a game, that you just want a good controlling racing game, then 100% this game holds up. You can come back to this right now and have a good time with it. But
Right.
I just want to make this disclaimer though, because again, it doesn't have multiplayer. If what you enjoy about racing games is the thrill of going against another, like a friend or a person online or anything like that, to beat them and have a good time, it's not going to hold up for that reason. Just because it's not what you're looking for. Like this is a
Right.
like racing games today. That's like there's nothing wrong with liking it for that reason. To be clear, like so many racing games are built on the competition factor against another person, that it'd be wrong for anyone to say that you're wrong to dislike this game because it does have multiplayer. Now, to be clear, you and I were able to kind of like do makeshift multiplayer by the fact we were switching out.
I
And
was about to say.
yeah, so you can kind of sort of do multiplayer, but the problem is like even though we were switching back, like one way you could do this is like maybe you and a friend could like if you're going through the single player mode and one of you is like really struggling on a course, maybe the other one could take up the reins and try their hand at the course and try to get through the single player mode that way. That's one way you could enjoy it for sure. But I think most people who play multiplayer racing games will want to like compete against their friends, and just having it there, it almost feels like you'd be better off playing one of the other later F-Zero games because they do have that multiplayer factor. And I think
I agree.
ultimately, if like for example, other F-Zero games make their way to Switch, like eventually they bring X or they bring GX or either the GBA titles at all, I think this game is going to unfortunately fall down a little bit on the rankings of whether it holds up, just because those games offer that and this one doesn't.
Right.
So
I think that's a great disclaimer. That's because that's the key. If you want multiplayer, F-Zero is not your game. But if you like arcade style racing games that play by yourself, it's perfect.
exactly, and I'm glad that you mentioned arcade racing specifically because a lot of modern arcade race games even have multiplayer where you can like the machines are next to each other and you can play
Right.
against each other. But like arcade machines are typically known for you go race against yourself against the computer player. So if
Right.
that's something that you enjoy anyway, then this is not going to be a problem. You're going to enjoy this game, no problem, because if you enjoy those kind of games, those are also usually a single player experience, and this is no different. But yeah, if you really are into the multiplayer thing, then this game won't be for you. But if we're barring that aspect of it, this game does hold up. It was fun to play. We had a great time playing it.
I agree.
Any other last thoughts before we move on?
No, looking forward to the next one.